John. How you doing?
Good, Ben. How are you?
I am fantastic. It feels like it's been a while since I've done one of these, but it's probably only about 2 weeks or so.
Ah,
You get out of the rhythm pretty quickly, you know.
yeah, I can imagine. That's a good thing though, getting that reset.
It is indeed. I'll be honest. I did completely forget that this is. I'm pretty sure this is the one. Can't hardly hear Ben.
Dominic, I can hear
Oh,
you.
you
Oh,
can hear
no
me.
sound from you. I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Everything's up as loud as it should go. Let me check something. Very low. I'll boost that up. Is that better? This happens every now and then. It's very frustrating. Microphone. Scarlett? Yeah. Is that any better, people? Bernard?
Yeah,
Donald?
I can hear you.
I think okay now. I'm like blasting from my side. I can blow my head off. Okay, so maybe I have to. 1 second. If I just do this as well, right in the microphone. I don't know. Better. Okay. Right now next to my mouth. It's it's showing me red. It's so loud on my side. So whatever. Anyway, I was just about to say, ironically, as I apparently mess up the volume for this one, that it's the 100th episode, I believe, and
Oh,
so
really?
there you go.
Oh, wow.
I was meant to do something for that, but I completely forgot. I'm a very forgetful person. Also, probably a little bit of apathy on my side as well, to be honest. Uh, but yes, so thank you for joining me for episode 100, John.
Yeah, this is an honor for 100.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
pretty cool. So I've watched several of your videos. So enjoyed enjoyed
Fantastic.
the style and just getting to know quite a few of the folks in the data world.
Just a little bit chat, basically. I think someone once said it was like the Seinfeld of Power BI streams. It's a show about nothing. I'm like, that's fair. I can live with that, to be honest.
It gives you some good perspective though, where people come from and how they got in the data. So
I was
grounds it a little bit.
I am so confused because people are saying that my volume is 20% of yours, and I can hear the exact opposite. I can hear basically that my volume is infinitely louder than yours, which is which is very confusing. Oh, let's check the settings. What's going on here? Video, audio, speakers. Yeah. Well, let's do something in that case. Let's boost me up here as well, and then I can only really try to understand what's happening here. I've boosted mine up all the way. It really can't get much louder than that. And I've
I,
also,
I I can definitely hear you just fine.
yeah. If it continues, I don't know. I could maybe log in, log out again. 1 second. That's switched on. This is switched on. Yeah, man, it's just loud, basically. Anyway, John, would you like to introduce your? Sorry for this. All this is strange technical issues. I'll just have to speak up, man. If I speak any louder, my neighbor's going to be like banging on the door. Um, John, do you want to introduce yourself while I try to sort out these issues?
Not a problem. Hi, I'm John Kerski. So Ben, I've live in the United States. I'm outside of Washington D.C. I work for a consulting service. So I'm the director of Microsoft Solutions at Client First Technologies. So I've been there for a couple years. Been in the government space or U.S. government space doing IT for a number of years. So anybody on the GCC environment, I feel your pain for some of the things we go through from time to time. I know Microsoft is trying their darndest to get us new features. So, but it's I do a little commercial work too, but the it's been a nice experience working with data and working in government and helping folks out in the Power BI world and a little bit of Power Platform too, getting over to Power Apps and Power Automate.
Okay, you get a little bit apps as well, right?
Yeah. I actually started out in SharePoint, so that
Ah,
was
that's
that was my
interesting.
start. Yeah, and then somebody said, "Hey, we need to put some reports together," and
Mm,
around SharePoint 2010, and started working with Power Pivot in SharePoint. It was like analysis services that you could run
mm.
there, and came across Power Query, and then after that, it was like, okay, this is something I want to work with.
Now you're on
And
track,
then
basically.
yeah, and then Power BI came out. And it was started working there.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned you said SharePoint, yeah. um,
Yep.
because I was looking at your Sessionize profile, and I'm pretty sure was it on Sessionize profile. I'm pretty sure there's a session about. Thank you, Lester. See, right, Lester's saying that my volume is good, so I appreciate that. It's the first positive comment about my volume.
There you
Score.
go.
Uh, you have a session about using Power BI in SharePoint, or was it a blog post? I can't remember. Um,
So I do a session on how to pull data from SharePoint lists and document libraries more effectively. You can imagine for a lot of large organizations, SharePoint becomes an area where you store a lot of information, and the connectors for SharePoint can get you into trouble in Power
yeah,
BI
yeah,
quickly. So it's nice for small lists, but after you
yeah.
hit that 20,000 mark, you're going to start paying for it.
Fair, fair. No, I was just interested. I saw it on sorry, I can't remember if it was your profile or on your blog, because it's not something that I've seen very often, and it's something that I have worked with, not so much now, but in the past a lot. The way I just had a discussion with it the other day. I've never, because for me it's like SharePoint as a data source has always been actually somewhat acceptable. Actually, like I think it's because you see so many shocking data sources that when you see something that's like, structured like a SharePoint list or the classic Excel file saved on someone's local drive or something, which is always deeply upsetting. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's SharePoint. I can live with that. This is this is okay.
Yeah, I would say a lot of organizations, they start out with ways that they want to get their business processes tracked, and SharePoint's a natural way to do that. And
Yeah.
then at some point you kind of outgrow it,
Hmm.
and that's where I guess where Dataverse has now come in, where you
Yeah.
can migrate from SharePoint to Dataverse, and Power BI works a lot better with
Yeah.
Dataverse. So
Did you ever have any dealings with Access at all?
yeah,
That was a painful year.
yeah. So prior to actually coming up to DC, I worked down in Florida, and we had a very large organization and very spread out. I was working at the Department of Corrections, running IT development, and so you had these little pockets of access databases,
Get it.
and inevitably they hit that limit for the number of the size, and then
Yeah.
you get those phone calls like, "Hey, it's not working anymore," and I'm trying to migrate them to SQL or find ways to get
Yeah.
around issues.
My first big project with Power, and I've worked on project before, but like larger scale project was I was working for a company called BASF at the time, and they had a lot of their data for one division actually stored in Access, but it was being used for so long, and it was just was falling apart. But every time you had to add new data, like refresh every month, you had to delete some, otherwise it would just crash. It wouldn't work. And I
Oh,
vividly remember going to a meeting with a colleague, really great guy. It was a really fun session, but we literally went through every single table and we're making notes on it on like an actual flip chart because we couldn't get our head. It's like we have to do this somehow really like old school flip chart pens to understand what was going on and to get that moved across in the data warehouse. That it was at the time horrific, but it's a kind of like a nice memory to have of working on something like that.
but you were in the trenches, so it's something that you build.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Literally,
I remember one I opened one time, and it had no relationships and like 20 tables in Access, and I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting to try to build.
yeah, that'll do. That's class. It's
Yeah.
always fun these things. I've got to bring up this comment from Fernando. He was saying he was at SQL Atlanta last year, and the sessions happened at the same time. Your room was crowded, and his was empty. I'm sure it wasn't empty. Maybe just fewer people.
I don't think so.
No,
Don't worry, Fernando. I've had my fair share of empty training rooms. So
uh,
when you're like up against like guy in a queue, Patrick, and they're next door, you're gonna draw
yeah.
the short straw sometimes.
I was at this conference in the Faroe Islands a couple of weeks ago, and it was a kind of a lot of the people who were attending were kind of newish users to Power BI. And I was presenting. My session was on Deneb, so like code stuff, how to custom make custom visuals using code, which is not the usual topic for people who are kind of just getting introduced to Power BI and data visualization. So about a minute before my session was due to start, I looked, I was okay, there's, I think I forget how many people were there, but an okay amount. And I just checked to make sure everyone's here. So I checked next door and I was like, yeah, that room's full. So this is all I'm getting. But yeah, it's what happens.
I know what that's like, but I mean, I've watched your videos on for the Deneb piece because inevitably there's times where your customer is asking you, hey, we want to do something, and you're like the standard visual just can't do it, and I've gone to your videos just be like, okay, if I can do it in Deneb, maybe I can just get that little bit of polish in there.
Oh, cool.
So I like the tool. It is really nice.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's the standard thing when it can be a bit of a trap sometimes where you realize you've been working for 2 days to get a visual set up precisely how you want it, So you have to tread that line carefully. But nah, it's great. Obviously, I like it. I'm biased, right?
Well, I always have to do that balance because I do a little JavaScript development too. So I've done custom visual development, but there's often times where it's like the work to get the custom visual. Deneb definitely can just do it without actually having to go through the investment of writing code for it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's real nice.
But you what's your day-to-day role? What do you find yourself doing most often? And what's your kind of go-to project or?
So I'm a technical lead on a couple projects. So my day-to-day is working with teams. We're doing data ops and agile. So we've got features. Starts off with scrum meetings in the morning and trying to work through getting certain features out. Trying to tackle meeting with customers on new features for dashboards and reports.
Cool.
And most of them are around the government, so they're trying to put together different business processes, large data sets, and make some sort of educated decisions on where they need to move resources, where they need to make decisions on projects, and what projects are not working as well, and what areas need improvement. So they got all these metrics and everything around it. And as you can imagine, trying to make sure in large organizations the metric numbers match up across the board.
Yeah,
that's a fun one. That's a fun one.
It's like the hardest thing.
It is. I'm hoping Microsoft solves that issue with metric sets. I saw Power BI Tips. Yeah, Power BI Tips had a nice video last week on it, or at least I listened to a podcast they did, and that seemed exciting. That might actually solve some problems with sharing metrics and making sure the number's the same.
Absolutely. I think I saw a video that Chris Wagner did a live stream with someone who was presenting them, I believe. But I need to get back into that. It did look pretty cool. Yeah, we shall see. But this is exactly what Donald said. Numbers only match if they all come from the same model. So I mean, that's always the dream, right?
Yeah. There's nothing worse, and I don't know if you run into this in meetings. In some meetings, you're still the paper or the printouts, and now it's like PDF, where somebody has a number and it's like, well, that number doesn't match this, and then you're like looking at when did you run that report? When was that number? Where'd you get the data source? And you spend a good first 10 minutes just trying to resolve the data lineage instead of actually having a productive conversation. So a lot of the work that we work with clients is eliminating that and trying to come to a point where they can focus on the numbers and have trust in them.
But at least is getting to the point where everyone agrees how things should be measured as well. I mean,
yes, that's half the battle.
Yeah,
that's more than half the battle, actually.
And actually, but I actually also don't mind if the same thing is measured 10 different ways based on requirements, as long as the thing is labeled and everyone knows that this metric is measured this way for that department for these reasons, This is me. I totally understand that, but it's just when there's none of that, it can be very time consuming.
Yeah, I would say I think the big thing what we always work on is transparency, and I can't take any credit for it, but we work with a lot of folks who do a really good job communication wise, like just putting videos together, having community of practices to just keep educating people about metrics and how they're calculated. And it takes some of the mystery out of it, and the the chance for mistrust to kind of creep in. So that's exciting. But
Mis-
that's like
mis-
separate from data. It's just all
yeah.
communication and or change management, which is its own beast.
I mean, I I agree, and also not at the same time. It's like, yeah, it's all separate from data, but you can't like work in data without actually having these discussions all the time. For me, it just becomes like part and parcel of the same thing, you know? Like, yes, it isn't the data, but when you work in the data industry, you're gonna have those conversations so often, or we have to address it. It's yeah. Sorry, one
Yeah,
second. Sorry, please continue.
yeah. I would say I actually my background is that I've got a project management professional certification, so I do a lot of
Nice.
project management before I got into data. And when I got into data, you could definitely see that there was gaps. And it's like, oh man, why aren't we applying some of these agile principles to data development? Because
Fair, yeah.
yeah, you have a lot of people who've done C# and JavaScript development that kind of
Yeah.
they went through some of the hardships, like take some of their best practices and bring it over here so that you don't have to, you know, spend all that time trying to fix issues and babysit semantic models and deal
And
with
these are things for me, because how I came into the industry was just by chance, kind of, by discovering Power Query and then discovering Power BI, and I didn't set out in any way to be a data analyst. It's just what I ended up doing, and one of the things that you learned or I learned along that path was, I just assumed data was going to be about like the data, but it turns out, as you said, that's just half of what you're looking at. You have you have the data, then you have all this other mess and conversations around it, and it's a really you've learned you learn that really quickly. It's quite interesting.
yeah. I'd say on some of my projects, I spend, a good majority of the first couple weeks just working with upstream data providers and trying to like build relationships with them, just because you rely on those upstream data sources so much. And
Yeah.
then, if the people consuming the data don't necessarily know the upstream ones may be the problem
Yeah.
or the cause for the issue, then they're
Yeah.
always pointing at you. So you try to keep those relationships good.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sitting in between, the people who use the data and the people who do everything with the data, the engineering part or whatever. It's an interesting. You're kind of like looking both ways sometimes during a conversation, and obviously not passing any bucks or anything, not blaming anything, but just trying to sort out, kind of like appease stakeholders while sort things out with the other side. It's quite challenging for sure.
I agree with you. I mean, you don't want to throw them under the bus because then you might have to ask for some admin rights or access to this, and if you burn that bridge, that's a problem.
Especially when it's always been like, for me, like a lot of my work prioritization like comes under the fact, like, if you are nice to me, you'll be a higher priority. If you like behave like an ass, then you're gonna have to wait. So I have to like,
Yeah,
it's fair, right?
it's still it's a people thing. I mean, the technologies is a part of it, but the people part is never goes away.
Completely, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fernando says that you're the master of CI/CD, which is something I definitely did not have to Google as soon as you said it. But there you go.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Fernando. Yeah, I spend a good amount of time with my teams and consulting, also with how to build Azure DevOps pipelines or GitHub Action pipelines for uh, publishing and testing Power BI semantic models. So we got a couple templates out on my GitHub site that I share with folks. But now we're getting into the PBIP format, which is the
Right.
Power BI project format, which it opens up a lot of other avenues. And so teaching people how to, instead of having to publish manually, how can you rely on a pipeline to do it and test it and build
Yeah.
that safety net? So
Yeah.
I've inherited too many models where you kind of make a change and then you hit that publish and you're just kind of hoping you didn't break it. And
Completely. It's terrifying.
it is. And I tell, build the test, get that safety net in place. So that way, when you do publish it, there's less likely that the person who takes it on is breaking something. So, and then maybe you can take a vacation. So,
Maybe.
yeah. So,
This is what I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I forget who it was with, but I think of all the things that I wish had been in Power BI at the beginning. When I say beginning, I mean like 2016, 17. Um, was exactly that, this file format with the ability to, the change management, because I think that it hasn't existed for so long. There are so many people, by the way, I'm including myself here, that have never really worked with this format, with this way of doing things, that it actually feels like quite a significant change. And to introduce it feels like quite a complex thing, because it's not like this really like straightforward method of working. If you're used to basically building a report by opening your PBIX, publishing it, and that's it. To
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I still think there's that learning curve. Git is definitely something not a lot of folks in the data industry are familiar with, and I would I mean any employees that we bring on to my organization, I mean we'll spend a good week getting them up to speed on like here's how you do a commit, here's how you
that's
do a
cool.
git clone. Yeah, it's yeah, I mean it's part of the process. You're going to use Visual Studio Code, and you gotta train people on how to use it. But I still think there's a barrier to entry there
Yeah.
that prevents folks from adopting that versus maybe just putting it in SharePoint and doing a sync. So I think Microsoft could do a little bit more to make that integration. Git integration is making that a little bit easier, the new features, but it's still I think there is some apprehension about it, people looking at Git because you already have to learn DAX, you already have to learn Power Query. What's this other command line now that I got to learn? I just want to get the report to my boss so that they can tell me it looks good. So
Yeah, but yeah, this is exactly, and the people who are building reports, I mean, are often people who, that, as you literally just said yourself, just, they want to build a report so the boss can see it, and which is completely valid. I mean, this is what a lot of people do. It's what the job is, and a lot of people, they aren't. I mean, I'll use myself an example again. Aren't these like complete like nerds who are like really interested in learning all these bits and pieces? They just want to ensure that they can build a report to show the data, you know? And a lot of companies really don't allow much time for this larger process of getting all these things in place, you know?
mhm.
I think that's like, because you have that addition, that this added time to do those things, um, there's a, a decent percent, sorry, a decent chance, I should say, that this very cool functionality just won't be utilized, because people just don't see this process that involved to actually get the report built. But on top of that, the other things that have to fall into place to ensure that the process is going to work for an extended period of time. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think in some cases you become you don't realize you're a victim of your own success, and then you got to maybe refactor and maybe adopt Git in that until
Yeah.
it might be a little too late, and then you're kind of already in the technical debt to try to dig yourself
Yeah.
out. So I
Exactly.
mean, I've worked with plenty of folks where they started out with two reports, and then it like ballooned to 20, and they
Yeah.
hired people, and then you had
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 people, and now they're trying to coordinate what changed between these two reports. Like, did you touch this report? What did you change in that report? And then
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of the native features don't really tell you. Oh yeah, I added that new slicer, or I changed how that DAX formula works, so that's why the number is going to be completely different, and it's hard
Yeah.
to tell. Like, it's
I
really
mean,
tough.
it is certainly, it's absolutely the best way of doing it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the functionality. It's awesome. It's better than, writing it, change logs in a whatever Confluence page or something, But it's yeah, it's worth learning. But I think it is all this that comes with it. I think the past year perhaps has been a lot of new stuff put out there. Obviously with Fabric, and then Microsoft Champion Fabric, and then bringing in Copilot as well. So you're like looking at this, and then it's quite difficult to know which is the most important one to learn. But I think that probably is, to be honest. It's up there for sure.
I so I tell my colleagues that regardless of if you stay in data or you don't stay in data, if you stay in IT, if you learn Git, it it pays dividends in the end.
Mm.
Whether you
Yeah,
want to use GitHub
true.
and you want to showcase your work and be able to collaborate with other folks, if you
Mm.
know Git, it's easy to do that. Or if you know don't want to work in data and you want to still work in IT and do application development, learning Git is a good thing. And
Yeah,
yeah, I would say like even the tools are getting better. Like GitHub Desktop and
yeah.
Visual Studio Codes has made it
VS Code is
a
awesome.
lot, yeah, a lot easier to integrate with Git than it used to be.
What I what I love about VS Code is primarily my own, for want of a better word, stupidity. Because for for the most part, I was just using it as a place to like copy and paste my code. So and basically, I was like, yeah, I don't want to use Notepad anymore. Let's use something that's gonna use it better for writing code. So I was using VS Code, and I was like, okay, it's nice. It's the formatting works well, and I had like zero idea it could do so so much more. And I was just sitting there using it as this very very basic functionality. But it is a cool program for sure.
Well, the marketplace is just amazing. Like all
Yeah,
the things you can add ins these days. I was even some of the ones with Git or Markdown or I know I don't know if you've talked with Gerard on his extension for the Power BI APIs, where you can actually like interact with the APIs through his extension.
I don't think
That's
so.
a
That sounds
ti-
awesome.
that's a time saver.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a really nice tool, and it's just like that. I think the marketplace itself has helped that product be
mm,
adopted. Where I remember when it first came out, people were like, "Oh, I'm going to stick with Visual Studio, and I want to stick with my IDE." And now everyone's kind of navigated or migrated to Visual Studio Code as their default development tool.
yeah, yeah. True.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Johnny here just knows how much I love Git. And then I think like probably 10% of my tweets are just me hating on Git, not because I don't like it, just because I'm just grumpy about it because I'm too lazy to learn it. Um, it's very much top of the list of things that I wanted to learn for the past 2 years, but haven't got around to it. I'll get there. I believe in myself. I will get there.
Well, I kind of hope, and I'm not the first one to say this. There's several other folks out there in Power BI world have said like, why isn't there that easy button that just says commit, and you
Yeah.
pick the repo and it just does it from desktop, and then you just kind of take your hands away from it. You don't need to use another tool like VS Code to do it. That would be,
Yeah.
then you take away that the haven't actually really learn it. You just kind of know how to interact with it.
Yeah, like easy mode for that would be wonderful for me. For me, it was just the very very basics at first of actually knowing how to do literally anything, because I found that the terminology was interesting. Well, to like find a file, then it was looking at forking things, and I was like, okay, so if I touch anything, am I going to break what's there originally? So the basics of course, like the extreme basics came to me. I did also on my own GitHub. I wanted to, really start contributing as much as possible with the Vega Lite stuff, and I had this idea that I would upload, a template every day or at least a couple of times a week, and I just massively failed. To be honest, I think I've got the little green square probably about 10 times in the past year or something. I was like, that's pretty tragic how much you've actually failed there, man.
I do like Johnny's comment, learning Git by completely messing up a repo. Yeah,
Yeah, true.
that is very
Only,
true.
only way to truly learn Git is to screw up a repo, then have to figure out how to unravel it. I like that. Diving in the deep end. Yeah, learning through terror. Good way to
Yeah,
learn. True story.
yeah. I would say I would use ChatGPT these days for a lot of the Git commands that I just don't know, because you get to the point where it's like, well, okay, what's a rebase, and how do you
Mm.
like reset these things and all that stuff, and it's all right, ChatGPT, please help me.
Yeah.
At least it's been good there.
I had a while ago was Matthias Tierbach was on, and he did like he actually did a screen share. Show me, said, "Oh, man, you don't like GitHub? See how all the cool stuff you can do. See how easy this is." And I was like, "No, yeah, it's very cool for sure. I like it a lot. Easy, not so much, but for me, but very cool. I mean, you can do again one of those things that you see it, and then after like 10 minutes, you understand that you're just like scratching the surface. Back to VS Code on there as well. But yeah, it's I don't know. it's helpful. It's becoming more and more. Actually, this is a good thing for me. That the more necessary it gets, the fewer reasons I've got to not learn it. So
Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
yeah, it's true. I know I've had a couple folks very wary of getting into Git, but you give them a couple months and then it's just like old hat, and then
Yeah.
they get used to working with it. I think the light bulb for a lot of them is when you're working with like a PBIP file or like Matthias's
Mm,
PBI tools, and you want to know what's the difference between test and prod, and it can actually give you the, oh, you changed that line of M
mm,
code, and oh, you moved that filter up, and it's like, oh, I don't need to try to figure out why it's broken. I know why it's broken
mm,
now because I can compare it,
mm.
and it makes that's something that would have taken like 2 hours to download the two files and try to figure
Yeah.
out, that
Yeah.
gets answered in a couple seconds, and then you
Completely. Yeah.
see the benefit.
That's really awesome. Sometimes I feel like because I came again data industry through Power Query, Power BI. These are very much kind of like tools that do have that inbuilt easy mode, you know. So before I was doing a lot about when I was learning Power Query, of course you just do the applied steps and then you see the code and it kind of like slowly introduces you to the code until you build up the courage to start building your own connectors and whatnot, you know. And even with like Deneb, because I worked so often with APIs, the JSON format just kind of made sense to me. I was just so used to kind of reading in that format, um, and I guess the only real thing that was any ever difficult was when I was like 16, like doing like HTML and stuff, you know. But that was like 90s style HTML. Like, this is a website, this is my cat, all this kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah,
So
I
it's a
remember that.
different world.
It's changed.
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah, a lot. I can remember those HTML days. There was
Yeah.
some. I lost my train of thought on what I was going to say with the code piece. You said you were working with custom connectors.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. How's that experience been for you?
I That was a weird noise. I enjoy. I mean, I really enjoy working with Power Query. You know,
Okay.
so doing that sort of thing is enjoy. I mean, enjoyable. And I mean, if it, other than Deneb, my other favorite thing working with Power BI is for sure Power Query, because when I was starting working with the tool, I not intentionally, but I was using just connecting to the ugliest, most messy data sets. You know, like really badly designed websites. I was like scraping sports data and stuff. You know, so I spent a
Hmm.
lot of the time just trying to really bring shocking data into chaos. So that was always something that I quite enjoyed. But no, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I only got into it in the last like year or so,
Okay.
and yeah, using the Visual Studio Code extension, and
Hmm.
it's been an interesting experience, like getting that to work and
Yeah.
compile and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So, uh, but we got it to work for a couple of the connectors we needed, so I was happy.
Nice. That's the thing. When you actually manage to get it to succeed, this is also what I like about APIs as well. I love working with APIs because, well, every API pretty much is different. So it always feels like a challenge. And it always feels like when you achieve it, it's like you've defeated the API. You know, it's like a challenge. And this is, I have a similar feeling sometimes with Power Query in that regard as well, you know. Um, but because
Well,
I was working with these horrible data, I had this like, you know, when you learn in an unstructured way, you'll learn some really complex stuff that your level for your level you shouldn't know, but there's some
mhm.
really basic stuff that you don't know that you should know. It was really interesting, like to go through and just back then, so like 2000, say 18 by that point, 2018, doing that stuff with Power Query, but like having very basic DAX knowledge, you know. So having conversations with people that are like, how do you not know that? And then like half an hour later, but how do you know that?
That's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
the APIs, I tell you, half the battle for me is like getting authentication to work. So I feel like if I could just authenticate to the API, I've like I've won.
Yeah,
Especially if it's OAuth. I'm like, oh, I finally got it to work.
Completely. The authentication is just an absolute pain in the ass. It's truly. I mean, honestly, I've never done this, but I should have just like saved the code that I used in every single API to see if that one matches that one, you know? And what is it with APIs and just shockingly bad documentation? Like, there was
Oof.
probably like two APIs I've ever worked with, and like that's good documentation. The rest are just pants.
It's tough to find. I mean, it's very tough to find. I can't say I found one that's on the authentication piece. I don't think I found one that's like truly what you want. And it's like
Mm.
you're always trying the URL out. You're like, is this
Yeah,
the parameter that's going to
yeah,
work? Is this going to
yeah.
get me what I need? And you just want that token to come back.
Completely.
Not a,
And in the example section, it might as well just say, "Here is the most useless example ever. It will be of no help." I'm like, "Cheers, mate."
it's, exactly. It's like that is not a scenario anybody is ever going to use. Or it's like that's the
Completely.
laziest scenario. That is
Yeah,
like the laziest scenario you could put as documentation. How about you
absolutely.
write what the 15-page step that you need to authenticate? So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
kind of like it's like documentation. Like your boss has told you have to do documentation, and you're like, "Yeah, whatever, boss. I'll show you documentation." You do like the most basic version ever just to appease him, you know? And
yeah. Well, sometimes they don't pay you for it, right? They don't pay you enough for
true.
documentation, so you got
I
it
will.
out the door.
The one company that I know, and I will say the company's name in case you want to give me money. They don't. They're not going to. There's a company called Airtable. I'm not sure if you know Airtable. I've used it a couple of times. Airtable is basically like some kind of like online database thing. It's kind of like a. It was probably touted as some kind of Excel killer. It's not, obviously, but it's pretty cool. They have amazing documentation for Power BI. They literally says if you are working with Power BI, you need to do this, 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 and this, and it all just works. I was gonna email them and like just send them a lot of money as just a thank you. It's just kind of like this is. It was truly astounding just to see it. I'd never seen it before ever.
This is
Specified.
the shining example.
Yeah, it was like someone should have written Ben Ferry. If you want to do it, this is what you do. It was amazing. So just that's the one time I've seen it. The rest is just garbage, basically.
It's like I will give you a testimonial on that. So I saw Fernando's that dollar sign. I'm
I
guessing
didn't
he's
see
worked
this.
with O data before, so that's
Uh,
like the SharePoint Graph API.
yeah,
Ooh, that's a whole nother language to learn
yeah.
in itself. Can
This is, but expand on that. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So OData is
Hmm.
like Microsoft's layer of querying an API on top of the REST
Hmm.
infrastructure. And
Okay.
so if you want to like get data out of Microsoft 365 or SharePoint,
Hmm.
your URLs, like every kind of select or a where clause or a filter, has a dollar sign on it, and you
Okay.
always forget it, and then you get this weird error message, and you're like looking at your API, and you're like, "What's wrong with it?" And then you're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, it's a dollar sign," but you probably spent 10 minutes trying to figure out it was an errant dollar sign that's missing.
Yeah.
So that's
So it's just got a new thing that you're gonna miss, like when you spend like 2 hours looking for the comma that you missed. You also have to spend the 2 hours looking for the dollar sign that you missed as well.
it exactly,
Good
exactly.
for
And
it.
there's no IntelliSense that could just tell you, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? You didn't
Mm,
add that dollar sign there. So
mm.
I haven't tried it with Copilot for GitHub. Maybe it's smart enough to tell me now, but
Maybe. There you go.
yeah,
Copilot. If it is Copilot smart enough to find the dollar sign, I'll be
yeah.
honest, probably not, but we'll see. But isn't it weird to work in an industry like where your day could be literally ruined by a comma? It's such
Yeah.
a strange thing. You know, like if you're a writer, you miss a comma, that's okay. But for us, it's like I don't know what's happening right now. Just give me like we'll see. It's so
At least Word tells you you missed the comma. Like, half the time, Visual Studio Code's just like, yeah, you can do it. Have fun. Get some weird error.
annoying. Yeah, that's pretty special. Um, but these are the annoying things, but there are plenty of wonderful things about a job as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
I'd say the when you get the oh, this is amazing. I've never seen. something like this before, or we were able to make a decision or save somebody time that they did manually. You feel good. It's like, all right, all that work or that evening getting something out the door finally paid off, and somebody's happy, or we made life easier for them.
Just the joy of seeing the completed work, you know, like all the effort you've put in. It's like, oh my God, it's going to take so long. And sometimes it does, but when you see it all come to fruition, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. You've built something. You feel like you've accomplished. I like building things, so it's once it's working, you feel happy about it. And then
Basically, yeah.
if folks use it and they like it, that's even like that's over the moon. Like,
Well, that's that brings us on to a different topic completely. Are people going to use the thing that you built? That can be fun.
oh yeah, that could be fun. Like back to the communication stuff. I think half the time it's just like continually educating people about here's the product and how can you use it. And I think a lot of folks expect like just because you publish it, everybody's gonna come to it and
Because they
start using
flock
it.
to it. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
the field of dreams, mate. No.
it doesn't work like that. So unless it's printing money, it's probably not going to get the same amount of attention that you think it's going to get, unless some hard effort's in.
That being said, like I'm really if I build a report, because obviously you have all the internal statistics as well of your company has X number of reports and this is report number whatever. I mean, at my previous company, it was always really cool because I built. I'm not sure this is still true. I've changed since I left. It was like a year ago. But the couple of the reports that I built, they were always like 1 and 2, the most used reports at the company, which of course was pretty cool. Made me feel good about
Yeah,
using reports. That being said, I'm really fine if I build a report and just like 5 people use it, but they use it consistently. As long as it's helping those few people do the job, that's all I can ask for.
yeah. That's true. I mean, it's especially if you're saving them so much time, or they're getting so much out of it. That's an awesome thing to do.
That's the dream, right?
It,
You said before, it's a really random question. You said you like building things. Do you also like building things away from computers, like with your hands, like woodwork or something, or whatever? I'm just curious because you mentioned it.
no, not really. I mean, I do have tools when you got to do stuff around the house, but I actually outside of if I got away from IT, I would be fishing. That's my thing. I love going fishing.
That's I can see the appeal for sure.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
get out very often?
Not as much as I'd want to, but usually maybe over the summer I can maybe every other weekend go out and teach my daughter how to fish and
Oh, that's
go with
awesome.
my wife. Yeah, so and my wife's a really good fisherman. So she'll outfish me a lot. So it's fun. You get out in the canoe, the cell phone has to go in the watertight bag, so you never have to, you're not constantly looking
Nice,
at the phone. So you
nice.
disconnect,
Yeah,
connect with nature, and it has its own like focus. The
yeah.
lure, the reading the river, reading the lake, and all that kind of stuff. So I get in the zone there, and
Awesome.
that's probably what I'll do when I retire. Is turn the computer off and
Sounds like a good plan.
go fishing. So.
Whereabouts are you located exactly?
So I am just about 20 miles west of DC. So kind of the
Okay.
mid. If you have ever been on that part of the United States, you're like close to the Potomac, but also like midway to the mountain range that's out
Okay.
there, the Shenandoah Mountains. So
I
it's
know that
it's
from the
it's
song,
yes,
right?
yes, yep, John Denver.
Very
So
cool.
I hope it should be John Denver.
I
So
think so. It's
yeah,
Country Roads, though, right? This is the song we're talking about.
yeah, country roads.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yep,
See,
exactly.
I guess like every American knows this, but I'm like, oh my God, I know that word. I know that song. There you go. Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, this a nice area. I mean,
Hmm.
it gets kind of hot in the summer, but you get all 4 seasons, so I like it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Plus, there's a lot of water, so I can go fishing close by.
I mean, that's why I asked. I was curious about if you many near lots of lakes or whatever, or just had the
Yeah, we do. We've got a lot of lakes and a lot of rivers, so it's
very cool.
nice and very accessible for folks to, you can get a canoe
Mm.
and get to a body of water and put the slip in, and they got nice little slips where you can go out, and so it's really nice around here.
Very nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
have been fishing only a few times in my life, and it was all in Australia because I'd always wanted to go fishing, I'd never done it, and it was really awesome. I mean, the only thing I ever caught was an eel, but what are you gonna do? But when I moved back to Berlin, I wanted to keep doing it, but I didn't realize. I mean, it's probably not that difficult, but you have to get like a license and stuff and pass all these tests and whatnot. But in Australia, it was just like you buy a rod, you go to a lake, you fish, and then every now and then someone will come by and tell you not to get too close because of the crocodiles. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm too scared of the dinosaurs. I'm not going anywhere near that water. Don't worry. But yeah, then I moved back here, and I was like, oh, man, like. Also, I think my German wasn't great back then. Um, but I decided recently that I would start just playing golf because
Okay,
that's my retirement plan,
there
basically.
you go. There you go. I didn't know you had to get like I mean, in America, you got to get a license, but I didn't know there was a whole class involved just to
Mm,
learn
yeah,
how to be able to fish. Okay.
yeah, you
I, I
got it.
could I could see I might not have done that. That would have turned me off.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I kind of like, on these moments, I really judge myself for being so lazy because I guess it wouldn't take that long. And it's been like 10 years, but it's like, nah. And also, I guess probably for me and my skin type, I'm not the best for fishing because if I get bitten by a mosquito, I like just immediately start to swell. So I'm probably not great to be near bodies of water anymore, to be honest. There you go.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. I burn. I don't tan. So well, in the summer, it's kind
Yeah.
of like you'll know it's me because I'm covered pretty much head to toe.
Sometimes
So
I feel I come out of the summer season more white because the factor 50 just is absorbed into my skin, you know?
yep.
You can see this is not an exaggeration. This is like how basically my face is either white or pink in places. And I go back home. I mean, I never go on holidays in hot places anymore because I don't enjoy it. But when I would, like, I thought you were going on holiday. I was like, yeah, I did. It's like, how are you still so white? It's like, because it's me. This is what I do.
Yeah. It's like I don't tan. I put
Yeah.
SPF 70 on there because I never had a like a proper tan.
No,
It's either I burn and then it just turns white again.
solidarity there. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Fernando wants to know if you keep the fish.
Uh, if it's in the freshwater, it's catch and release. But saltwater, there's a good chance I'll keep it if regulations aside, because you can put that on the grill pretty quickly.
Ah, there are rules of what you can do. I did not know that. There you go.
Yeah, they have how many you can keep, the size, and all that stuff, so you don't overfish. But in the ocean, you can get some tasty fish. So
I
I don't know.
bet.
Some of the rivers and lakes, I don't know if I'd want to eat the fish
Fair
unless I
enough.
had to. So I mean, the yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Let's just say for the sake of the stream that you abide by all the regulations perfectly, and won't argue with that.
E- exactly, exactly.
Fair. There you go. In case someone very randomly from the local authorities in your area is watching this live stream, because that's gonna happen, sure.
That
Oh,
would be really odd. I'd have to tell you if that happened later.
that would, yeah, I would feel terrible, but also it would be strange enough to kind of release some of the guilt from my side. It'd be like, that's just too random. Aye, aye, aye. Anyway, I'll move it back to data because I don't want to speak. I mean, I would speak about fishing and golf the entire time. It's all for me. It's all fine. Um, Question I haven't asked in a long time that I used to ask all the time, and I realize I haven't done it in ages. If there was now, normally this is Power BI, but you're more than Power BI. So let's just you can scope this to your entire um, fight field of your profession. If there was, I always say if there's one thing you could change in Power BI, what would it be? But you can say if there's one thing that you would change in the area of which you work, what would it be? Feel free to. You can also make it Power BI. It's up to you. Like a
Uh,
functionality or something. I don't know.
um,
Just put you on the spot, just to really make
I
you
mean,
think hard about it.
the get button would be really nice in there. That would eliminate a lot of issues. I'm trying to think.
When you think about that, maybe you can go for Donald's questions first. It's probably easier. What about fabric are you most interested in?
Pipelines are probably my the one I'm really interested in with the introduction of that refresh, the semantic model. We have
Okay.
a lot of the work we do is like trying to coordinate different data flows and data sets to kind of refresh at the same time. And we've
Mm,
had to kind of put together stuff with Power Automate in the past to do that. But
mm,
pipelines make that so much easier. And then also the ability to send messages to teams to say like, hey, this broke,
mm.
and just have it up. That having that instant notification is nice. I'm really excited where pipelines are going, and then the obviously notebooks, having to brush up on Python. So
Oof.
I had done quite a bit of Python work a couple years ago, and
Mm,
then went back to a lot of SQL and Power BI work, and then notebooks came out, and it's like,
mm.
okay, I guess I got to learn Python again,
Yeah,
because I look at like what Sandeep's doing, or you see those blog articles, and you're like, this is
totally.
amazing.
It's
I
incredible,
just need
right?
to learn Python.
Yeah, the Python becoming more relevant was very upsetting to me. I really, I really tried to learn it a few years ago now, and I took a course and it was okay, but it was just class. I had no use case, So I did like this intro course, but I went away for like the the following 4 months and I didn't use it at all, which was basically the same as having never learned it. So I have to go back to square one on that one. But yeah, it's cool. It's very helpful.
Yeah, I'd say the PySpark stuff also adds that other layer to it.
Hmm.
So we
Nice.
successfully just tested PBI dataset. Yeah, that's nice through an ADF. That's really cool. I It's like one of those features I wish had been there from the start, but I'm
Hmm.
just glad it's there now,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Fair
it
enough.
was all the time you'd like you could write a PowerShell script to say, hey, refresh that data set, and then it would do it asynchronously. So you'd have to
Hmm.
keep polling. Are you done yet? Are you done yet?
Understand.
Are you
Yeah.
done yet?
Yeah.
Now it's just a nice little box that I just add and say, refresh that data set and let it run.
I have to say, anything that would remove the need for Power Automate from a process is fine by me, because I don't understand. I mean, I do understand Power Automate, but I feel that I'm using it wrong or doing something wrong. I just feel it's really not a consistent tool at all. I feel its failure rate is far too high, and I really don't. From what I've done, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, but it's so frequently I'm like, oh, it's failed. Why? Oh, no reason.
So you triggered if I could change anything in, like, it's
Nice.
how data source credentials are managed in Power Automate and Power BI.
Okay. Right. Good
It
one.
is really hard to reset credentials without having like open Power Automate,
Oh, it's
and
so
it
annoying.
only like you only know when it fails when it finally hits that step,
Yeah.
and there's no way to figure it out beforehand, even though you
Yeah.
try your best. And so you inevitably are like in Power Automate trying to find that step that had that connection.
Hmm.
It would be nice, easy if it was just up at the top, and
Yeah.
it had like gone through all the steps and just kind of did a cursory check for you and just told you,
Hmm.
hey, fix these.
Yeah.
And even if Power BI did that, would be nice. I
Hmm.
think half the time, if I could just remotely update a data source credential,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which you can, but then it expires every hour.
Yeah.
So like once you do it, you got to keep doing it, and
Hmm.
it's like, okay, that's just a pain.
I remember a situation. I'm not sure if this is the case. I'm not sure if actually this might be more internal policy, but using certain data sources, it would the authentication would expire like every 2 weeks or something.
Yep.
That drove me crazy.
Yep. I I have a couple of pipelines right now that operate like that, where we have an Outlook calendar or just a morning meeting. Hey, it's been 2 weeks. Do we need to try to refresh that
Absolutely.
or check to make sure? And then uh, and I understand the policy from the security perspective, but I just
Hmm.
wish the tool was easier and I could just click a button and then
Yeah.
put in my credentials and then be off with
Absolutely.
it. But half the time you got to open it up and
Yeah.
And it's like, an hour or two has been spent trying to reset everything for the day.
I made, I think I got to the point where every Monday I would just go in and just start doing it. Because I know it happens every 2 weeks. And I was like, fuck, if I do it every Monday, then it's never going to happen. So fine. If I was on vacation, I was like, just go in and do it and it'll be fine. So
That's a smart approach.
yeah, I mean, obviously I hated doing it because it's manual, and obviously, I hate doing such manual things. It's, I guess the nature of the of the profession. But it was wildly frustrating. Yeah, we can do.
Oh, it is. It is. And there isn't, I mean, at least on the Power BI side, if you have gateways, you could probably get
Hmm.
around some of that
Yeah,
issues. But, for a lot of organizations I work with, like that's not necessarily a solution.
yeah.
But it's still the amount of clicks you got just to update it when it's done. We
Hmm.
counted one time, it was like, at least over 120 different clicks just to reset all the credentials.
That's
Um,
mad.
yeah, and it was, and we looked at automating it, and then they would expire every 59 minutes, so that kind of made it worthless.
I looked at every 59 minutes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was like, all right, well now I gotta write a job, and then I gotta monitor that job. It's
Yeah.
just like, how many more layers do I need to add onto this to make this work? This is like, I'd
Well,
like to take something away, not add something to it.
so we've come up with a 15. It's kind of like the Russian doll situation, you know? You got like 15 layers of solutions, and the top one it'll expire every 30 seconds, but it'll do everything else underneath, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, and then when that breaks, good luck,
Yeah.
right?
I think on a similar thing, just the things that would like to improve generally. I think the thing that frustrates me very frequently is just very useless error messages or error notifications. Just very, very. It's like, what do you want me to do with that? It tells me nothing.
Those are the best.
Yeah.
Those are the best. Some of those semantic model or Power Automate errors where it's like that makes no sense.
No. No. And you must know that when that's gonna come up, it's like this offers nothing. It's just kind of like it might just say it broke. It's just
There used to be an error message I used to work with in C Sharp. I think it was with SQL, and it would just say something went wrong, and then that was it.
I mean, at least it's using less words to tell you nothing. Some of the Power BI ones, the Power Automate ones, that it's like so many words with these long strings. It's like awesome. Yeah, something broke is a good one. Yeah.
You copy the error message, you put it into like Notepad, and it's like all this JSON,
Oh
and you're
yeah,
just, how am I supposed to figure this out?
love it. Oh man. One final question. I think someone asked this question at the very beginning, and I know we're at the very end now. The pictures or the picture behind your head, directly behind your head, looks very interesting. What?
So that is from a painter. We bought that at a flea market in Iceland.
In Iceland.
Yes, yes.
Cool.
So yeah, my wife and I, we love going there when we can,
Ah, I've always
and
wanted to go.
that's beautiful. I mean, if you like the Faroe Islands,
Yeah, they were amazing. Yeah.
you'd like Iceland.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
beautiful. And then the two other ones were, we were in Costa Rica, visiting when I was much younger, but the Iceland one's more recent. So
Yeah, it's
that
awesome.
was a nice trip.
Yeah, I work in
Got
man.
some,
I've wanted to go for years to be honest, and it's actually it's not doesn't not difficult to get there. I just haven't, I guess, because of I don't know, dogs or whatever. But yeah, no, Faroe Islands was particularly awesome.
well, if
The
you
whole
said
thing.
like the weather changes all the time, Iceland's the same way.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it is. It's very similar in terms of like it's raining, then it's sunny, then
Yeah.
it's snowing, and then
Yeah.
then it's super windy.
There's a guy. I'm not sure if Imran is here in the chat, but Imran was attending the conference as well, and he was saying that there are two Facebook groups in Faroe Islands, and one is called "Where is the Sun," and the other one is called "Where are the Police?" Because basically you can just the south part of the island was just completely foggy. You can see basically nothing, but the north side just been like covered in sun. And one of the locals said that when the north side is when the south side is very foggy, it tends to be that the north side is not quite clear. So people just go there and they just, tell the other people who live in the Faroe Islands where the sun is, so people just go and enjoy the sun for the day or something. I'm not sure. And
Just get a little vitamin D.
yeah, I'd be very interested to see how often the sun and the police are in the same place. Just to maybe the police are following the Where's the Sun group, and wherever the sun is, that's where the police go as well.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, John, thank you so much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate being on the 100th episode.
the 100th that I basically did absolutely nothing to celebrate, but that's just what you're gonna do. I enjoyed it anyway.
I did too, so appreciate it.
And I hope my sound got better at the end. I'm honestly at this point so sick of the sound of my own voice because in my ears it sounds like I'm literally screaming at myself.
Oh,
Um,
no.
so I'm gonna go and probably not talk for the next hour because I'm sick of my own voice. But
Gotcha.
John, thank you so much. Everyone in the chat, thank you for all the questions and comments. Always make it a lot more fun. And I guess I'll be back next week. And yeah, goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, Ben.